Well-known San Diego attorney Cory Briggs has filed multiple lawsuits against the city and others. A report raises questions about the nonprofits that are his clients. San Diego Lifeguards accuse the mayor of political payback by blocking a workers' compensation benefit. And what's the use of state dental insurance if no dentist will take it? I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, our reporter Brad Racino of iNewsSource. Hi, Brad. How you doing?
Mark.
Reporter Joshua Emerson Smith of San Diego City Beat. Good to see you back, Joshua.
Very good.
And KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Hey, Kenny, how you doing?
How you doing?
Well, environmental attorney Cory Briggs is well known in the halls of San Diego city government. That's because Briggs has been a lawsuit machine against the city and other public entities over the years. Now questions are being raised about who Briggs is representing in these lawsuits. And Brad, start by telling us who Cory Briggs is and why we need to care about these lawsuits.
Sure. So Cory Briggs is, as you said in the open, a well-known environmental attorney here in San Diego. He's been front and center in a lot of the biggest legal battles in the city, whether it's the convention center expansion or development of the waterfront or open government. He's kind of been the public face of a lot of this, and he's always representing plaintiffs in these lawsuits.
Okay. And in the interest of full disclosure, one of Briggs' nonprofits has sued your organization, iNewsSource. What's the status of that lawsuit?
Sure. So San Diegans for Open Government has sued our organization over our lease terms with KPBS, and that has been filed in court, but we actually have never been served with that lawsuit.
Okay, so we'll see what happens on that. All right, your story this week explains that in order to sue, an attorney needs a client. They need standing. You can't just file a suit on your own. So explain what that is and how Briggs has gone about getting these clients.
Sure. So standing is just a state statute that says that someone who's bringing a lawsuit either has been harmed or will be harmed as a result of whatever actions they're taking. So you can't go sue somebody if you don't have some kind of standing.
Somebody's got to be hurt by it and need to be made whole or redressing that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so these nonprofits are organizations that Briggs has founded, and they're the clients, as it were, who he claims harm for in these environmental lawsuits he brings.
Right. Well, we found that there was a network of these nonprofits. They're either 501c3s or 501c4s. There's a slight difference when it comes to tax-deductible donations, but they're public charities pretty much. Mm-hmm. And when we looked at these, we looked at state filings, federal filings, we saw a pattern, and we put together that pattern, and what it appears to be is that either Briggs or his family members sit on the boards of these, or the physical address of these nonprofits are the Briggs Law Corporation. So once we kind of pieced that together, we saw that there were, I think, more than 35 of these nonprofits, either 501c3s or 501c4s, and then there are a number of others that have never filed anything with any state or federal government but do fit that pattern, but because they haven't filed, we don't know who's on the board or what their address is.
Okay, so to keep your nonprofit status, there's rules, federal rules, state rules. To keep this up, you've got to file certain things and justify what you're doing under state law.
Right. These are public benefit corporations or organizations, so they need to benefit the public and they need to prove to the government that that's what they're doing, and that's why they get these tax-exempt statuses. But to do that, they need to file with the California Attorney General, they need to file with the California Secretary of State, they need to file with the IRS, and they have to do that every year.
Okay. Now, San Diegans for Open Government, that's arguably the best known of these nonprofits that Briggs is involved with. Talk about that one. What cases has it been involved with? You may have alluded to a couple earlier on.
Sure. San Diegans for Open Government has sued the city alone, I think, more than a couple dozen times. It's sued all different agencies, whether they're federal or state or local, and usually they're environmental lawsuits. They're over the California Environmental Quality Act. Sometimes they're over open government. They're suing the city attorney and Todd Gloria, or actually just the city, but over Todd Gloria's emails and city attorney's emails. That's in appellate court right now. And most of the time, though, it's over environmental issues. It's over something that the public needs to
Yeah, I mean, the name San Diegans for Open Government, it sounds like a noble thing. Kenny, you have a question.
Well, what's the most unusual thing that jumps out at you about this whole affair?
Well, there's a few. One is just the number of these organizations, how many there are, how Briggs is always the only lawyer who represents them. When we actually looked at the filings, what I noticed that was really interesting was that they all have, or not all, I'm sorry, 19 of them have the exact same mission statement, which is about promoting social welfare through advocacy for and education regarding responsible and equitable environmental development. So they all claim to be doing this education
work in the public good,
and work in the public good, but they all really only seem to exist in court
as vehicles for lawsuits is what the implication is. So you had some legal experts look at some of the filings of Briggs nonprofits. So what did they find? What did they say?
Their biggest issues with the filings were the transparency element, that they're not filing, that these groups that claim to be about open government and transparency are not open, and they will not answer any questions about this. We tried to contact everyone associated with these groups, not just San Diego's for Open Government, but the other ones. No one will speak to us. We also requested IRS filings directly from the group per state laws. We never heard back. So they took issue with that. They also took issue with where the money goes. So when Briggs wins a lawsuit on behalf of one of these plaintiffs, he will get attorney's fees and there may be a settlement involved. That settlement, according to the experts, should be showing up in these filings, but they never do. All of these corporations say they have no money at all. So it appears that all of the money goes to Briggs.
So again, what has Briggs' reaction been to your stories or to questions about
He will not speak to us. He sent an email to our lawyer a couple weeks ago saying that it was unethical for him to talk to us, and we responded. Our lawyer responded and said we see no ethical problem with this, and please feel free to respond to any interview requests, and he will not answer any questions.
All right. Now, is the state attorney general investigating Briggs and these nonprofits?
We will never know that. When it comes to the IRS, the federal government, the state government, they will never comment on pending potential investigations or investigations that aren't happening. They won't tell you either way.
All right. Now, the San Diego city attorney is the lawyer, biggest law firm in town, or certainly one of the biggest law firms in town, and they are on the other end. They're representing the city's interest when they get sued by Briggs on behalf of, say, San Diegans for Open Government. So I wanted to talk about the checks and balances within the judicial system. Doesn't the city attorney come into court and say, well, wait a minute, you really don't have standing. This is, if sham is the right word, this is not a solid organization you're representing. You don't have an aggrieved client here. Don't they challenge the standing there? In other words, why isn't the check and balance system working if he's doing something that's not right here?
They are doing that right now over the Business Improvement District lawsuit that Briggs has filed on behalf of San Diegans for Open Government. We link to it in the story. You can read it. There's about 4 pages where they lay out all of their evidence as to why this, what they call is a shell corporation for the Briggs law firm. They did go about deposing a number of the members of San Diegans for Open Government.
This would be witness statements under oath.
Right, and they deposed, I think it was 9 of them, and 8 of them they proved had no standing at all. They had no standing in this case. There was 1 left who did, but she pled the 5th and refused to be deposed any longer. So what they're arguing right now is that she should be thrown out, and San Diegans for Open Government has no standing on this case, and that should be dismissed.
Right. Joshua?
So is the idea that the paperwork for these nonprofits is kind of sloppy?
The paperwork is either sloppy or non-existent. What seems to be the method or the commonalities among them is they're formed and then they're used to litigate and then they're just kind of cast aside. They get notices from all different government agencies saying you have to do this, you have to register, and they're just ignored.
And they should have boards that they don't have, or there should be a nonprofit board overseeing this that has some kind of stake in the lawsuit, and they don't seem to exist? The
nonprofit boards that the boards of these nonprofits that we've actually been able to see are almost all the same people, and it's either Briggs, his wife or partner, his cousin who's a CPA with a business right next door to his, or 2 other people who we found are common in a lot of these.
Now, if you're enjoying nonprofit status, and there's a benefit to that certainly in tax benefits, where's the watchdog in that? If you're not doing this, if you're not filing, or you're not filing according to the letter of the law, I mean, is the state attorney general or the state agency falling down on the job? Are judges not challenging this properly in court?
I can't speak to that as much as, I mean, we've done a couple investigations involving charities, and I've been amazed at what they will not look into. I don't know if it's just that they're overloaded, that their budgets are...
Manpower thing at the state level?
Yeah, it might be and maybe the numbers aren't big enough. I mean, maybe if you added a couple zeros to these settlements and these things, maybe it would catch their attention. But I have been told that there are thresholds in different parts of the country for either federal or state oversight agencies, and they will not look into something unless it hits that threshold because they just don't have the manpower to do it.
Right. And then so what's at stake for someone like Briggs if they do find out about this?
It could be a number of things. I mean, you got
Is it criminal?
Couldn't answer that. I don't know.
At this point, your story is raising questions, but as you say, you'll be looking ahead here in terms of these depositions and these actions that the city attorney is taking.
Right, right.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. I'm sure there'll be more to come as we move along. Well, lifeguards must wade into all sorts of poisonous stuff to save lives. Contaminated surf, drainage ditches, flooded roadways. They risk contracting things like hepatitis, TB, and cancer because of their jobs. So there's a legal provision making it easier for them to qualify for workers' compensation. Cops and firefighters have it, but lifeguards say Mayor Kevin Faulconer is blocking it for them out of spite. Josh, let's start by explaining what this whole presumptive medical coverage is.
You did a fantastic job of laying it out, actually. You can qualify for workers' comp if you are injured on the job. However, public safety employees have what's called presumptive medical coverage, which makes it easier for them to get workers' compensation. And it says that if you come down with any one of a number of illnesses, like you said, meningitis, cancer, different things, it is assumed that you got that while you were working, and you get workers' compensation coverage because of that, because your job is dangerous.
All right, Kenny, you've been covering health here at KPBS for years. What is the problem with storm water runoff and wading into kind of these flooding situations?
Well, I mean, if you're wading into toxic chemicals, who knows what you could get? Skin problems, some internal bacteria get in there.
Infections if you get caught in the job.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very dangerous.
Okay.
And they say it doesn't necessarily come out immediately.
Right.
It might come out while you're on vacation, after you've retired.
Or cancer develops years later, perhaps. So the idea is you might fight an issue on a workers' comp case like cancer or one of these maladies we're talking about, and that could take forever before you even get to the benefits of the workers' comp.
It's not like you dropped a rock on your toe.
Right, right, or fell off a ladder or something on the job as a firefighter. Okay.
Right.
Now, the City Council has approved this plan to offer lifeguards workers protection the same as cops and firefighters?
It's in the 5-year needs assessment. So they've said that it's one thing that they want to pursue going forward. And the question is, how expensive would it be? The mayor put together this proposal with the fire department saying, here's a list of things that we think fire should get going forward, and this was included in that. Fire department felt like they were going to get this. It was just one more thing. Why shouldn't they have it? They're 100 full-time employees, 220 part-time employees. The number of public safety employees in the city that have this are somewhere around 3,000. Mm-hmm. So would this really add too much to the rolls in terms of an extra cost? Then apparently 6 weeks ago, Lifeguards Union says Kevin Faulconer comes out and says we're not supportive of this, which took them by surprise.
So the mayor had been supporting it before and now all of a sudden says no.
It seems that way. All
right. Now, Ed Harris, let's talk about him for a second. He's the head of the Lifeguard Union at this point, but he's got a little more background than that as a leader in the city.
That's right. He's the spokesperson or the shop steward for the local here in San Diego. Okay. And he was recently replaced Kevin Faulconer when the mayor was elected in a special election.
So we had that interim period where he was actually a council member.
And then
Ed Harris,
Harris becomes council member for District 2.
Okay. So he is claiming now, Harris is, that the mayor is blocking this lifeguard protection here, and he's kind of saying it's out of political spite.
Yeah, so when Harris was on the city council, he pushed to block a lease extension at the Belmont Park amusement park, which apparently really infuriated the Republicans. He led the city council to block the lease after
Harris being a Democrat.
After he left the council, the Democrats did, the council did approve the lease extension, but because of the whole fight and row that Harris had started, Cory Briggs comes along and says, I'm going to sue over this. So now they have that on their hands, and it looks like the Republicans are very frustrated with the whole situation.
Okay, so the Republicans in the council are upset because he put the fly in the ointment on that day, he being Harris. So now he's saying, well, they're coming back, it's political payback time, and they're hurting my lifeguards here by doing this.
Right. So we'll see what happens. The next thing is that the city council will take this up.
Okay, Brad?
Yeah, I really liked your story, and in it there was something that caught my eye, which was that you said that Mayor Faulconer had cut off access to City Beat staff regarding basic questions. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about that.
Right, yeah, that's very frustrating. Under the Bob Filner administration, we all remember having a hard time trying to get access to city staff to understand basic nuts and bolts things, such as how many city employees have presumptive medical coverage. So when I was reporting on this story, I called up the city. I said, I want to understand how presumptive medical coverage works, what employees have this, and they said, sorry, we're not going to give you access to that. It was extremely frustrating, and it felt like they were walking back a pledge for transparency that they had touted for some time.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
So, I was going to say, so instead of just having a basic question answered, you're forced to put in a records request or something for that information, wait weeks or however long they want to.
yes,
to
clearly
get back to you.
they weren't going to talk for the story on any topic.
All right, so we are in the midst of contract negotiations. I mean,
Yes.
could you make the argument, the devil's argument that you know, maybe this is just posturing and the mayor's trying to get a better deal as they negotiate this contract with the lifeguards?
Absolutely, you could. Although it seems like this is a pretty black and white issue. Either they get it or they don't. And then the thing is it's going to go to the city council. So the city council is discussing it in closed session right now. They could come back and the city council could vote as 5 Democrats to push this forward. They want presumptive medical coverage for the lifeguards. If it goes to the mayor's office then and he takes a hard stand on this and says, I'm going to veto it, it comes back to the city council, they're going to need a 2/3 majority. Then the pressure gets put on Lori Zaff, who represents a large section of the beach community, has stood up for the lifeguards in the past, and in fact, during the 5-year needs assessment, when they were passing that, she said that this is chump change. This doesn't cost us anything. We need to put this in place right away.
So she's on record as saying expense isn't really the issue here. Yeah. Very interesting. Now, we should say she's a Republican, Lori Zaff.
Correct.
Represents
Yes,
these
hardline
beach
Republican.
districts. Kenny?
How can the city justify giving this benefit to other public safety personnel and not the lifeguards?
It is written into state law that the other public safety employees have to have it. It's state law. So other lifeguards around the state don't have this. The city would be doing something above and beyond because we have a robust, large force of lifeguards here.
This could potentially
so
set
it's
a precedent for.
It might set a precedent, and it's required by state law. That's basically the thing for other public safety employees.
Well, how do they predict what the cost would be if they have no way of knowing how many people would file claims anyway?
Right. So yes, it would have to be an estimate. Maybe they'll have IBA look at it, and that's what's going on.
That's the independent budget analyst, we should point out.
And right, so right now, that's what I hear behind the scenes is they're trying to do a cost estimate of this.
All right, a few seconds left. Is this something they have more political clout? The lifeguards are with the Teamsters union now. Is this something they might strike over?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a very good question. They do have a lot more political clout. They made a couple of advancements over recent years since they pulled away from the Municipal Employees Association and started their own and joined the Teamsters.
So we'll have to see how this plays out all through these negotiations.
Could be interesting.
All right, we'll shift gears now. Western Dental, a major provider of dental care to low-income people, declared they will no longer accept new patients. It's the latest problem for the state program known as Denti-Cal. Kenny, start by telling us what Denti-Cal is and who is served by that.
Denti-Cal covers about 2.7 million low-income California adults and children, and it's basically the dental program for people on Medi-Cal.
Okay, so it's a part of that big Medi-Cal umbrella.
Right. The reason why there aren't more people on Denti-Cal is that for years, Denti-Cal did not give adults dental coverage. And that got rescinded a couple of years ago once we got back into the black, the state is, that is. So now more adults can apply for Denti-Cal coverage too.
All right, and so how many low-income adults and children have Denti-Cal?
About 2.7 million.
So we're talking a lot of people in this
Yes.
state. Okay. And tell us about Western Dental. Now, who are they? They're in San Diego as well as around the state?
They have 6 clinics in San Diego. They're the largest for-profit dental clinic in California. And when they say they're not going to treat new Denti-Cal patients, that's significant because statewide they treat about 700,000 patients a year. So that's a big chunk.
Okay. And they said this week, that's it. We're
That's
closing
it. They can't afford it. I mean, take a look at this. I mean, the Denti-Cal pays dentists for a cleaning like $20. Now, private insurers pay 3 to 4 times that. So for $20, they can't pay their expenses.
Can't pay the light bill, can't pay the staff.
They can't pay the dental assistant. It's not worth their while.
Okay, and we were talking before we went on the air today that this is a big deal because the whole system is kind of set up where they're kind of relying on these providers to do, if pro bono is the right kind, but to really subsidize this on behalf of these low rates with the state.
That's exactly right. And the Medi-Cal program itself is based on that same principle that they depend on the largesse, if you will, of doctors who are willing to lose money to treat Medi-Cal patients. And I was trying to think of an analogy to that. indigent people get legal representation when they're charged with a crime, but that legal representation doesn't depend on the pro bono work of private attorneys. There are public defenders and legal aid that provide that care. But in the Medi-Cal and Denti-Cal system, it does depend on private people willing to work at a loss.
Well, a lot of
Joshua?
times you have clinics in certain areas that will pick up this kind of work, right? So is that not the case in San Diego?
Oh, it certainly is the case. Community clinics treat anyone on a sliding scale, whether they have insurance or not. However, there's more than 12 million people now on the Medi-Cal program. They can't all flood community clinics.
Would overwhelm them, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you do have certain times of the year. We'll have a couple of days where doctors and dentists will donate their time, and they'll come in on one-shot deals annually.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that helps out. But again, it's not a system. It's the goodness of your heart in a short period of time.
It just seems to be a shaky ground, a shaky foundation on which to build a safety net system. California's Medicaid program pays the 48th worst rates in the country. And California's a high-cost state.
Right.
I just don't understand it.
Well, a lot of this must be the reflection of our economic hard times, and we've got to balance the budget by law here. And
yeah, I wonder. I mean, this seems like that this is an issue not just with dental care, but with a lot of government programs around healthcare, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it's Medi-Cal and the Denti-Cal program, but lawmakers and the governor just don't seem to get the concept that doctors and dentists are losing money when they treat these patients. I think I get the impression that lawmakers they don't identify with it.
Do other states have similar programs like Denti-Cal?
Yes, they do.
And how's it going with them?
Well, as I understand, it's going better. I mean, when you have what the providers in California are advocating for is said, look, at least pay us the same rates that Medicare pays, and that's fair. They don't make a fortune off that, but at least they can pay their expenses and that kind of thing.
at least a break-even proposal
Right.
at that level. Now, there was a conclusion. The California state auditor was pretty severe in a conclusion. I think it was the end of last year. What did they have to say?
Well, they said the rates are way too low, that the state should raise the rates. As a matter of fact, they said in 2013, 57% of children on Medi-Cal did not see a dentist. So that's pretty significant.
Right. And of course, that's the greater issue about Obamacare and the whole national debate we've been having, because that leads to problems. You get systemic infections, you get all sorts of things if you're not treated properly by a dentist. Now you wind up at the emergency room, and the costs there are much higher, as you've reported.
Right, and the problem is getting compounded by the fact that Obamacare loosened the levels in California that you have to reach to qualify for Medi-Cal. So now we have more than 12 million Californians on Medi-Cal. That's about 1 out of every 3 people in the state. But if they can't find providers to take care of them, as you said in the intro, I mean, what good is insurance? Right. If you have a card, but you can't find a primary care doctor, that's a real issue.
Now, there's an event coming Monday, and you don't normally see the doctors and these kind of white-collar professionals here out taking it to the streets, but tell us about what's happening on Monday.
It's actually
June
happening
1st.
on Tuesday.
Tuesday, okay.
They're holding a big rally at the Capitol where they're asking lawmakers en masse to raise the Medi-Cal, Denti-Cal rates comparable to Medicare, so at least we can make the system work.
So it's a funding issue. The state has to fund it along with the money that they get.
Right, and there is some more federal money the state could take advantage of to help pay for it. But again, it's a question of priorities, as you were saying, budget priorities.
Yeah, so the governor, and we've done all sorts of stories across the budget here. We're in the May revised position with the governor's budget here. He's got more money to work with. It's been a better economy. He's more flush. Do you think they'll revisit this, or is there some federal money that might come down and help out with these dental and medical costs?
Well, I think Medi-Cal officials are saying they hope to tap into some federal money, which they could supposedly use to as an incentive to get providers to treat new Medi-Cal patients. Right. But again, personally, I think the lawmakers, they don't have Medi-Cal, they don't have Denti-Cal, they have these gold-plated coverage plans and sort of their whole families. Right. They don't have to wait to see a primary care doctor. They don't have to wait to send their children to a dentist. They get it immediately, and I just don't think they feel it.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got a short time left, but I want to get into the political aspect of this. So often you wonder who's advocating for this group. These are poor folks. They can vote, obviously, but they don't have a bunch of money backers as so many other issues and other groups in California and across the nation have, and PACs that will go to bat for them. Are there some advocates who are stepping up and trying to get the legislature and the governor's attention on this?
Well, I mean, the providers have advocates. The California Medical Association, the California Dental Association, the California Hospital Association, they're all very big players. And they're helping to organize this lobby. They've formed a coalition to try to lobby for these higher rates. So indirectly, this is going to obviously benefit the low-income people on the program. But I don't think that the Medi-Cal patients themselves or Denti-Cal patients have an organization that's lobbying on their behalf.
So dentists are saying, oh, we'd love to take these guys, just give us a little bit more money.
Yeah, pay us some money.
All right, a couple seconds left. There are a couple of bills in the pipeline in California.
That's right, to raise the rates. So if they don't do it arbitrarily, they're going to try to get something passed through the legislature.
Okay, and we'll see and report on that as it moves through. Well, that does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Brad Racino of iNewsSource, Joshua Emerson Smith of San Diego City Beat, and Kenny Goldberg of KPBS News. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.